What's up, everybody? Welcome to Security Squawk Podcast, the business of cybersecurity. I have with me today Bryan from Tech Rescue down in South Texas. How are you today, sir?
Pretty good, Bryan. How are you doing, man?
Hey, not bad. All things considered, I guess, right?
Yep.
We have a lot to talk about today, folks. I guess why don't I just play the video, right? And then we'll jump into the discussion. Let me share my screen here, and we'll get right into it. So I said this is my YouTube channel, right? We got that up. Is that look right?
Looks like it. Looks like it's an infinite window inside a window.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. I don't know what I'm screwing.
Don't fork bomb your machine or the StreamYard server, please.
I know, right? What am I doing wrong? In technology, we should just do the entire screen, right? Not just the window. Yeah, that's the one we want right there. There we go. All right, so I played this video. I'm going to play this video, something I said on Friday before the news dropped, of foreshadowing probably what would happen over the 4th of July weekend. And here's what I said. Here is that we're going to see some big ransomware attacks over the holiday weekend. That's usually when these things are deployed. There were a ton of ransomware attacks over the Memorial Day weekend and leading up to the Memorial Day weekend. So I wouldn't be surprised that we see a major return of ransomware attacks over this weekend and in the next coming weeks as hackers set their sights on trying to get into the networks of companies that they know where people aren't there. So it's not just deploying ransomware, but these advanced persistent threat groups also getting access to networks and then taking control of them, getting in there so they can then contact the ransomware people and get the ransomware deployed maybe in a week or two. So I would say from today on, from tonight after we leave work to probably the next 2 weeks, the middle of July, I wouldn't be surprised if there's an uptick in publicly released ransomware attacks or large ransomware attacks. We are going to definitely hear an uptick of private ones that people never hear about. But I wouldn't be surprised if, in a day or two or Monday or Tuesday, we're hearing of major ransomware attacks in the United States. I think I was right.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much kind of a joke, in the cybersecurity world that it's a truth and it's the butt of a joke that attacks almost always start Friday at 5 when everybody's gone and they're not looking at their computers. And you really called this one in light of the current situation, in light of the almost invitation. I know that's kind of controversial for me to say that, but it's almost an invitation from the president. And, just in light of all that, you called it, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily like being right in this situation, but I study these criminal hackers. Both, I tend to study the Russians and the Chinese more than anybody out there. I do go on the dark web. I do research what the heck's being said out there, and it just I've seen it enough. I've seen the pattern where you don't see a lot of activity. They're gearing up, so to speak, for an attack. And I said I think one of the words I used on my YouTube channel were we're probably going to see something, when we close up shop, or literally it was a half hour after I posted the damn video, and it was 6 hours earlier than I actually thought. And I can only attribute that to the fact that these Russian hackers probably knew that the U.S. cuts out early on like that particular holiday weekend.
Long weekend, national holiday. I mean, our armed forces cut back on duty for July 4th. So I mean, that's kind of common knowledge. So yeah, so I mean, it was a opportune time. Not for them, obviously. No time's a good time for the receiving end of something like that.
No, so for those who really don't know what we could be talking about right now, why don't you break it down for them at a high level of what we're talking about and what happened? Really, go ahead.
So, I mean, so basically Friday around noon or in the early afternoon, Kaseya sent out a warning, or Kaseya got word, according to them, they got word that some of their servers were getting ransomware and it was starting to multiply. And so within about an hour, they shut down all of their SaaS servers, which those are the servers that they maintain, software as a service, SaaS servers. And then they also sent out a notice across the world, basically, if you have a VSA on-prem server, to shut it down, that there's an attack afoot. And basically, we don't know all the details. We'll talk about some of them today, I know, but basically it seems like they were in the VSA servers, which manage other computers, and basically sent out commands to disable Windows Defender, and then also sent out the command to download and run a malware package, a ransomware package, if you will. And all that went down, pretty much in a matter of minutes. So I think within about an hour was from when they discovered it to when they were shutting down their servers and going by their playbook, according to the CEO in his video that he put out.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on, and you described it well. I don't think I have too much to add to that, other than the fact that the result of that incident response that they have to shut everything down. So I guess they offer their product in two different offerings, right? You can host it yourself on your own servers or in your own cloud, or you can have them host it for you. And they made the decision to tell everybody to shut everything down as quickly as possible, taking their hosted customers offline kind of without their doing. It just happened. And then, hoping that enough of their on-prem or the people that host it themselves get the word quick enough where they shut it down themselves. I think they said there was one case where somebody left it on and they got hit after the fact. But the result of that is that these IT companies now, they are, I don't want to say characterize it as they can't support their clients, but this is pretty important software when it comes to, us delivering our services. And to not be able to use that software really hampers the operations. I don't know if it brings it to a screeching halt. I think for some companies it has, but it prevents all these IT companies. Yes, only 50 or so clients of Kaseya got hit with ransomware, but all of their customers cannot use the software that they purchased from them.
Right. There's I've actually read reports since he's spoken that it was closer to 1,000. So I don't know. I can't verify that. I think there's an article that we may be discussing in a little bit that it's a little more than 50. But reality is, like you said, they cut it short by having a playbook and by telling everybody to shut down their servers. But you're right. I mean, this software is what IT companies use. Some IT companies use to keep patches applied, which, that's an attack vector, is unapplied patches. So they keep Windows patches, third-party patches, monitoring when memory usage is high, disk drives are failing, disk usage is high. Like basic bread and butter managed IT stuff is almost exclusively done through an RMM like this. So yeah, basically the IT companies that are experiencing this right now are probably feeling kind of blind, feeling like a big part of their insight is cut out because they're not able to see what is going on in their customers' computers, which frankly is pretty scary.
Yeah. So, for our audience out there that's not, in the technical world, just understand that this is a great example to show you that any piece of software can be compromised, right? And if your IT vendor or the company that you outsource your IT to, or maybe you use some kind of software like this, and you don't use Kaseya, don't take any kind of solace in the fact that you didn't have this problem, because it could have been your software, or it could be your software tomorrow or next week or next month or 6 months down the road. So the important thing here is please make sure that you're preparing for a ransomware attack, because you can put as many defenses as you possibly can put. You could spend all the money in the world on cybersecurity, and that risk is never going to be 0%. There's always going to be a level of risk because of supply chain and things like that, where risk can only be reduced so much. There's certain things that are not in your control, and you have to accept that as part of your business and prepare for the fact that you may be attacked, or you may have a cyber attack, or you may have to deal with ransomware one day. That is the mindset that every business person, every business owner should have. And nobody should be looking at this like, I'm protected, my guys got me covered, we don't use that software, so we're good. That's the wrong way to look at this. And I before we get into the discussions of kind of what happened and shine a spotlight on Kaseya, I just want to be clear and upfront with our audience that nobody's immune from this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you live along the Gulf Coast. If you live along the Gulf Coast, you are going to get hit by a hurricane at some point. And you can build a house that has a foundation that can withstand it. You can take all kinds of security measures, and you should if you live there. But the bottom line is, it's not a matter. If you live in Galveston, I grew up around Houston. If you live in Galveston, Texas gets hit by hurricanes. If you live in that area, you've got to be prepared. You're going to get hit by a hurricane. And that's the way we have to start looking at this. We have to start looking at it like we're all in a hurricane zone, and we're going to get hit with it eventually. And it can either be devastating to your business and your business never comes back, or it's the death blow to your business and it dies a slow death over 6 months, which over double digits go out of business within 6 months. Or it can be something that happens, you're hunkered down, if you will, and it blows through, and yeah, it does a little bit of damage, but man, you did what you needed to do to be prepared for it, and you bounce back right after it, and you get back to work. That's really how we have to approach this.
All right, so let's jump into sharing some content with our friends and jump into some articles. I really like this article from one of the good guys on the security team, Bryan. He runs a really good website called Krebs on Security. No relation to Chris Krebs. A lot of people think they're related, but they are not. Let me fire this up right here, and let's dive into this article a little bit, because he's kind of opening a can of worms here that I don't know what to think of it. I guess I'll kind of formulate an opinion here as I go through this. But so the 1,500 organizations he's referring to are the 1,500 clients of the 50 MSPs, right? So you do the math. You're talking about an average of 300 clients per MSP, right? So if we're talking about 300 clients for a single MSP, just based on what I know about our market and who I'm friends with, 300 clients, that's a pretty big MSP, right? So these weren't little MSPs that were targeted. Maybe there were some small ones mixed in there, but you're talking about 300 accounts or 300 clients per,
right.
And then you probably have on average somewhere between 50 and 100 endpoints or employees within these 1,500 organizations. It could be more. We just don't know. So cybercriminals deployed ransomware that provide IT, security, and technical support to many other companies, and attackers exploited a vulnerability in the software from Kaseya. And it now appears Kaseya's customer service portal was left vulnerable until last week to a data leaking security flaw that was first identified in the same software 6 years ago. So on July 3rd, the Rebel ransomware affiliate program began using a zero-day security hole to deploy ransomware to hundreds of IT management companies running Kaseya's remote management software known as the Kaseya Virtual System Administrator, or VSA. And according to this entry, the security flaw that powers Kaseya VSA 0-Day was assigned a vulnerability number on April 2nd, 2021, indicating Kaseya had roughly 3 months to address the bug before it was exploited in the wild. So let's just kind of pause right there and give people some education around, what this means. The entry for 2021 is April 2nd, not July 2nd, right? So they're basically saying, and I think you mentioned it in the green room, that this was a Dutch company that told Kaseya about this issue. Am I wrong on that, or am I right?
I did mention that in the green room. I think they're called CSERT, and they can't give away too many details right now because we still have vulnerabilities that aren't patched. But they are saying that they've been in contact. There you go.
Yeah, DIVD. Yeah.
They are saying that they have been in contact with Kaseya since, I think, even before April 2nd, like maybe even starting in March.
And so, this is something that I just want to put out there and let people know that, and I may have mentioned this before. I talk about it a lot. I'm friends with a lot of security researchers, a lot of guys that are really, really good. And quite frankly, you don't want them to become criminal hackers, in my opinion. They're that good. And they butt heads and they deal with, quite frankly, assholes all the time in our industry who think they know better than them, or they think that their product is so freaking awesome that it could never have these exploits, or these exploits would only occur under very, very specific circumstances that are, really hard to replicate. And when you talk to these guys who figure these things out, they're like, no, it's not that hard to replicate. If I can do it, anyone else can do it, right? And like a guy like me who's kind of in the middle, I dabble in, the kind of stuff that I'm talking about with what these security researchers do. And I also watch what's going on the dark web. And it's literally a race to who can get to this stuff first, right? And a lot of times the good guys get to this stuff first, and then you have stuff like this where it just goes ignored for months. And when is that going to become criminal? When is it when a good guy, a security researcher, does the right thing, properly discloses a vulnerability to the companies the right way, doesn't put it on his blog, doesn't go out and boast about it on forums and social, doesn't go to a DEF CON or Black Hat and release this stuff? They go to the company and they say, hey, you have a problem. And then they're met with, hey, we don't believe you. How much longer do they think that we're going to have guys on the good side of this continue to do this?
I mean, it literally happens all the time.
I know.
I read about it constantly in the smartphone world of vulnerabilities that are, made known to the larger companies, and sometimes they just sit on them and don't do anything about it. You're right. I mean, there's going to have to be something. I read on their website, basically, if they found a vulnerability in a car, that if you kicked the bumper, the door would open and the engine would start. Do they just put it out as a news flash? Does the manufacturer make it aware so people can bring it in, or do they just quietly ask people to bring it in? I mean, this is basically what happened with Kaseya. they figured out a way. If you kick the bumper, the door opens and the keys turn on, and you can do whatever you want with that thing. And they made Kaseya aware, supposedly or allegedly, they made Kaseya aware, and and then this other vulnerability that goes back to 2015, a couple paragraphs down.
Yeah, we'll jump into that in a second. But the reality of it is you hit the nail on the head. CISA needs to step in and be to what in the transportation industry has the NTSB. Mm-hmm. And when there's an issue with a vehicle, they have to report it to the NTSB. There's a mechanism for releasing that information, and they issue a recall, and you either have to take it into the dealer or whatever it is that you have to do to get the issue fixed. And usually the manufacturer has to pay for the fix as well. There needs to be some mechanism like that. And if the government wants to help out with cybersecurity, that's one thing that I think that they could do very easily. Take the blueprint from the NTSB, give it to CISA, and anybody who finds something, send it to CISA instead of needing to go to the company and convince them that their stuff is broken and has a problem. Just give it to CISA, and then the feds can put pressure on companies like Kaseya who want to drag their feet and not do something for 3 months to fix a problem. I mean, I think that's a great idea. I know it's my own idea, but why not? Why aren't we doing that?
They need to do something.
I mean, the government has all these ideas on the table. This is a simple idea. So if anyone's listening out there who works in the federal government, this is like something you could probably do very easily. Just get something stood up where a security researcher can go to somewhere in CISA, report something, CISA looks into it with the security researcher, and then the government puts pressure on the company to do something. I think more would get done in a quicker amount of time.
Yeah, come up with a cool name for it, like voluntary risk and vulnerability something.
Who cares? Just fix these damn problems that I have to deal with all the time. So anyway, go into what you alluded to. July 3rd, Mandiant comes in. FireEye Mandiant, the flavor of the year when you have a cybersecurity issue. Notify Kaseya that their billing and custom support site, portal.kaseya.net, was vulnerable to CVE 2015-2862. Now, you see that 2015 number in there, folks? That means that this vulnerability was discovered in 2015. So this is a 6-year-old vulnerability that they decided we're just not going to fix this. Or maybe they never even ran a vulnerability scan against their portal to determine if they have this. But as a company of Kaseya's stature, I would think that they would have done this. They shouldn't need a company like Mandiant to come in and tell them that they have this existing vulnerability on their server. This is like, I don't know, cybersecurity 201. I won't say it's 101, but it's at least 201.
The disturbing thing is this vulnerability allows the remote user with just a web browser, not being logged in or anything like that, to basically go through the files on the server. And hopefully they kept the files, all their confidential information of clients, customers, IT firms, all that. Hopefully they kept that on a separate server. But we don't know. It might have just been kept on this server, which means that the criminals could have just gone through it literally says any directory and pulled out whatever they want. And I guarantee you, if they could, they are and have, and they're going to start using it against people, whatever they can find.
So it goes on to say that Alex Holden, who owns a Milwaukee-based cyber intelligence firm, he said he notified Kaseya, or Mandiant notified Kaseya after hearing about it from Alex Holden. And he said that he was able to use the vulnerability to download the web.config file, which could or may not contain sensitive information. We don't know, but it can. It usually tells the web application where the location of the database is and things like that. And kind of security 101. You don't want to be giving away too much information when you're deploying these things, especially if you're running web servers and things like that. You want to make sure that you're not giving away too much where, a hacker could take pieces from different areas of your environment and piece together, an attack. So it goes on to say it's not like they forgot to patch something that Microsoft fixed years ago. It's a patch for their own software, and it's not a 0-day. It's from 2015. The official description of CVE 2015-2862 says a would-be attacker would need to be already authenticated to the server for the exploit to work. But Holden said that was not the case with the vulnerability on the Kaseya portal that he reported via Mandiant. This is worse because the CVE calls for an unauthenticated user, and this was not, I think, or an authenticated user. And Holden said not.
The original vulnerability said that an authenticated user could do that, and he's discovered that you don't have to be authenticated. You can just browse at will from a web browser.
And then he goes on to say that they took the portal offline in response to the vulnerability report, and that the portal had been retired in 2018 in favor of a more modern customer support and ticketing system, yet somehow the old site was still left available online. Jesus Christ. I mean, come on, guys. Like, seriously, this is like Colonial Pipeline, leaving VPNs just out there, legacy VPNs. We're just going to leave this out here, over here, not deal with it, not update it. That's absolutely the worst thing you can do, folks. If you have stuff that you don't need anymore running in your environment, turn it off, get rid of it. If you leave something plugged in, you leave it on, that's more of an attack surface for somebody to take advantage of. The name of the game is shrinking your attack surface, and this does not do that. This is the exact opposite.
That's literally security 101. And in that risk and vulnerability assessment that CISA put out today, I think you posted it on your Facebook, mentioned that exact thing. You should disable everything that you don't need. Right. And you shouldn't have things out there. You shouldn't have APIs. An API is basically a really long password, and it allows other computers to interact with your server, with your computer. And if you don't need it, you shouldn't have it turned on. Right. They should be off. Everything should be off that you don't need. I mean, that's, I don't want to like dogpile on Kaseya because like you mentioned earlier, this could happen to anybody.
But we can dogpile on the fact that they ignore stuff.
Right. And I read earlier.
I don't want to make Kaseya to look like a victim, and they did everything perfectly right, and it was just this amazing hacker who breached their system, because that's not the picture we want to paint. There were absolutely missteps by this company.
Right, and where I was going with that is that I read in the last few days an article, I think from January, where their CEO was talking about going on their IPO at the end of the year. And he mentioned, their profit that they were at, they really need to be taking a certain amount of that profit and putting it back into, hiring a security company, hiring multiple security companies to consistently be going over their stuff. I mean,
from what I saw, they're actually in, and I'll pull it up later, but it looks to me like they're giving all their customers a FireEye or is it FireEye? Yeah, FireEye agent to put on all their VSA servers. So FireEye is going to be monitoring the VSA servers moving forward, which, I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but that's something maybe all these vendors need to be looking at, is somebody, keeping an eye on not only the SaaS servers, but the on-prem servers as well, just so they don't have to deal with a PR nightmare like they're dealing with. So at this time, there's no evidence this portal was involved in any VSA product security incident. The statement continued, and we are continuing to do a forensic analysis on system and investigating what data is actually there. So, but that's fine. And we may find out that the portal had nothing to do with the VSA hack. But the point is, if you have this legacy this thing out here that you no longer need, you no longer use, you moved on to something else, but you left this out there, it kind of gives you a bad look in what your cybersecurity posture actually looks like. Like, who's reviewing all your things? Who's doing the first step in the NIST cybersecurity framework, which is identify, right? Who is identifying what you have out there? Like, you read through this stuff and you can, if you're somebody who's, lives and breathes this stuff like you and I do, you see holes in their operations and what they do. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, every company's perfect and they don't miss things and there is absolutely human error involved, but that's why you have a team of people doing it. You don't rely on one person to say, okay, yeah, this is good. This is, taken offline. You use automation, you use people, you use a team. You're constantly evaluating your system and you're constantly seeing what's out there just to make sure that somebody didn't accidentally open something up or turn something on and forget to turn it back off when they were troubleshooting and all that stuff. So it's all earmarkers to, hey, really, this is no surprise to me at this point based on what's come out. Like, and I don't know how you feel about that, but that's kind of how I'm seeing it, is like, they didn't deal with this. They didn't deal with that. I'm not surprised.
Well, I mean, you've got to have a different set of eyes on your processes. And, you can't just, probably they've grown, they've been busy, blah, 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 and they really should have had some oversight of some sort, making sure that they were, keeping patched up, keeping vulnerabilities taken care of, all of that.
So now we got Sanders here. Is this the same Sanders who works at Krebs?
I'm not sure.
No, this is Michael Sanders over at Kaseya. And he goes on to say that every ransomware expert Kaseya consulted so far has advised against negotiating for one ransom to unlock all victims. The problem is they don't have our data. They have our customers' data. And we've been counseled not to do that by every ransomware negotiating company we've dealt with. They said that the amount of individual machines hacked and ransomware, it would be very difficult for all of these systems to be remediated at once. I don't really understand where they're going with this. Do you?
Typical ransomware is going to put a different decryption key on each computer.
No, that's not how they engineered this.
So I'm not quite sure where they're going.
They actually engineered the software from what I read. There's two. They can give you two keys. They can give keys to a specific company to unlock their files, or if somebody wants to pay them the 50 or 70 million, they'll give a key on their Happy blog that everybody can use to unlock.
So they preset it up where they're both were specific and then one generic key that works.
That's the way I understand it.
Right.
So
I'm just not sure where they're going.
I'm not sure where they're going with this statement. The problem is they don't have our data. They have our customers' data. Why is that a problem? If you pay them $70 million, Kaseya, they'll give everybody the key. And then each MSP could go to their client and put in that key and get the files back. And then they said, don't do that. And I guess they're basically saying you're going to pay $70 million and not everybody's going to get unlocked. And then you're going to open yourself up to lawsuits.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's probably what it means. So Fred Vacola, the CEO of Kaseya, has been out there doing a lot of damage control. And he kind of has taken the limited impact statement, saying only 50 of the more than 3,500 Kaseya customers have been breached. I don't know. Is that a badge of honor to you that only 50 of 3,500 or?
I mean, he doesn't really say that as a badge of honor in the
35,000. I meant. Go ahead.
Yeah, he doesn't really say that as a badge of honor in the video. He's just saying that because they had a playbook in place, they found out about the attack. They realized what was going on, and the playbook said shut down all the servers, and so they did. The scary thing, though, is that we're looking now that the servers aren't even going to be brought up until this coming Sunday. So that's a mess. Doesn't seem like they have it figured out.
So zero-day vulnerability that led to Kaseya customers getting ransomware was discovered and reported to Kaseya by this Boonstra, a researcher for the DIVD.
Yeah, that's the one we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, right. And in a July 4th blog post, Victor Gevers wrote that Kaseya was very cooperative and asked the right questions. Who knows? Also, parcel patches were shared with us to validate their effectiveness. Okay, during the entire process, Kaseya has shown that they were willing to put in the maximum effort and initiative into this case, both to get the issues fixed and their customers patched. They showed a genuine commitment to do the right thing. Unfortunately, we were beaten by Revel in the final sprint as they could exploit the vulnerabilities before customers could even patch. Now, that's interesting because, that kind of goes against what I was saying earlier about what I hear most experiences are with these security researchers. And that's what I'm saying. I did mention earlier that it's kind of a race, like between the good guys and the bad guys, I know that every good guy security researcher that finds a vulnerability, when he finds it, he's basically praying that a bad guy doesn't find it, at the same time. And then it still says to say that still Kaseya has yet to issue an official patch for the fall. Boonstra reported it in April. And Kaseya told customers on July 7th it was working through the night to push out an update. So they've been working on this for a very, very long time. I guess the maximum effort is a subjective kind of opinion by the security researcher.
Right.
I guess, in hindsight, maybe they could have put a little more effort in. I don't know. Who knows? I guess if they were told in April, look, if you don't get this fixed in the next 2 months, you're going to have a major issue on your hands. And they looked at it through that lens versus maybe, the normal way they do things, maybe, things would have happened a little different. But this is a perfect example why if a security researcher comes to you and tells you that you have a problem, you better get it fixed as quick as possible because the time bomb is ticking and you need to get it done. So going on, Geaver said the Kaseya vulnerability was discovered as part of a larger DIVD effort to look for serious flaws in a wide array of remote network management tools.
That next sentence is the kicker right there, man.
Right here. We are focusing on these types of products because we spotted a trend where more and more of the products that are used to keep networks safe and secure are showing structural weaknesses, he wrote. And this is just, he didn't pick out any one here. This is kind of what we said at the beginning of the show, that a lot of these tools can become a victim just like Kaseya did. So nobody should take any kind of solace or feel good that they're using a different tool and they weren't affected by this. So,
right.
So, yeah, I mean, wow. And then I'm just going to hop on kind of a little bit what we were talking about last week, right? And we talked about last week a lot of the government getting involved. And we know that Putin and Biden had a little discussion during their summit about cybersecurity. And this article here on ZDNet is claiming that the U.S. warns Russia to take action at their latest attacks. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, Randy. What are your thoughts here? I have some thoughts I want to share, but what are your thoughts here on this latest development where, the U.S., the White House has kind of sent a warning to Moscow about this Kaseya attack?
I mean, the article just basically starts off talking about and really at the very top, the subtitle about cybercrime operating in their own backyard. And, that's where the one involved in the Kaseya attack was based. and it's really, this is really going to become a contentious issue. This has the potential for, causing a war. This has the potential for causing embargoes, which is an act of war. Because if they're just looking the other way because their economy is struggling and they know they can bring in all kinds of money by letting these cyber criminals do their thing and then bring in all kinds of money into their country. I mean, I'm not a politician and I'm not saying this in any kind of official way, but that's almost an act of war if they're letting that happen. So I think this could get very serious very fast if we don't see cooperation between the two countries, because it's probably something that the Russians are allowing on purpose. We don't know. Like I said, I'm not a politician, don't care to be, but it's happening in their backyard and something's going to have to happen.
Yeah. And I don't like the back and forth. And I know the White House wants to make sure that they fully know the facts here before they decide to act on anything. But once the dust is settled and we kind of know what happened and things have been confirmed, if the White House doesn't do anything and they just kind of say, well, no critical infrastructure was hit, but the IT is supposedly critical infrastructure.
One of those 16 that were mentioned.
Right. And not only that, so is local government. And we know local governments in Maryland are dealing with ransomware as a result of this. So I kind of look at it as not having a backbone if we don't do something. And, and then, Putin, just knowing that guy, he's going to look at that and go, well, he threatened me and gave me the list and we attacked these lists. There was a hospital attack in Atlanta or in Georgia the week after he gave him the list.
Right.
So it's like the number of attacks that's going to happen since he gave Vladimir Putin this list is just going to keep getting longer and longer. And Putin's going to go, well, he's not going to ever do anything about it. He doesn't care about this. We're just going to keep going and continue to do so and keep stealing money from U.S. businesses because it helps us. I don't know. Yep. That's how I look at it. So you want to jump into this DVID? You want to talk about that for a minute, or are we good there?
I mean, I think we pretty much already did. I mean, the gist of that was they're just laying out in as much detail as they can their interaction with Kaseya when it started, because I think there's a lot of gossip going around, a lot of people talking things, pointing fingers, this and that. They're just kind of laying it out there. And then even in an official statement, though, since then, I thought we're looking at the one from the Dutch company.
Not yet. I was going to skip over that.
Okay. Yeah. So bottom line, I think we've talked about everything that's in that one.
Yeah, we have. So I'm going to jump into. I just want to educate people a little bit on kind of what these vulnerability things look like. So NIST, which is the National Institute of I forget if it's science and technology. I always get it messed up, but
I think it's science and technology.
It is. It is science and technology. But NIST is puts out these bulletins that are in this national vulnerability database. And for every exploit that's discovered in almost every piece of software, every piece of hardware, every firmware, every device gets assigned a CVE and a number. The CVE 215, that's the year, and then a number, that's basically the number of vulnerabilities that have been discovered and released. There are multiple of these released on a daily basis. Like I get an email every day from CISA with all of the vulnerabilities that have been released for that day, and I quickly scan through them to see if like there's anything that we're potentially using somewhere that could have a vulnerability. And this is what it looks like, and it's out there. And this is the particular vulnerability that was for the website that Kaseya ran, the portal. And this is what it looks like. It comes out. It tells you what the issue is. If there's a fix, they tell you what the fix is. But this is a thing. I wanted to show it to people. It's our government does it. They put it out there. It's for anybody to go and look at and understand and really take a look at what vulnerabilities exist. And, your job as a network defender is to make sure you do not have these vulnerabilities in your network. So, pretty straightforward there. And I don't think we have anything else to talk about today, do we?
Were we going to get into the RVA, the risk and vulnerability assessment that they put out?
Talk to me about that.
Well, I think the bottom line is what they've done is they've gone through and basically try to categorize by percentages where the top attacks are happening.
Oh, yeah. You mean the one that I posted on Facebook today?
Yeah, and then they've rolled out about 10 mitigation techniques that if you do those top 10, you're going to be wiping out like a huge percentage of the vulnerabilities that you might be faced with.
Right.
I just thought it was very interesting. The first one they had on there was for software.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the scariest one, where the criminals are able to insert code into software that goes on to be signed and published.
Yep.
And then later, use that back as a backdoor to get into things. But that was the only other thing that we had mentioned in the green room to talk about. We can, talk about that next week. There's a lot of good stuff on here that people should be doing.
Yeah,
there's
good stuff in there, but a lot of that's very technical. I don't know if that fits our business audience, right? But it does fit anybody who's a technical person.
If they would know if they're not doing it, I'll tell you that.
Who?
The business owners would.
I don't know. That's a very technical.
The mitigation techniques that they summed up is not. It's very.
You're right. The things at the top on the thing. Yes, you're right. Yeah, we could jump into that and talk about that.
And that might be best to save it.
Let me. I think I can pull that up pretty quickly. It's on my Facebook, so no big deal. Yeah, we can quickly share this and jump into it because it's relevant and it's new. So up here at the top right in that light blue area, they're basically saying mitigation for top techniques. So how do we mitigate the top techniques that these hackers are using? And the first one I have on there is application developer guidance, right?
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about.
Yeah. So it's basically saying if you are having software developed in your company, you need to have software best practices, guidance, and training to application developers to avoid introducing security weaknesses through code, right? And just so everybody knows, developers and coders, it depends on the person, but really not security minded type people. They're, I need to get this code to work type people. And as somebody who used to be a developer, and I developed software and web applications for the Navy in the early part of my career, that was very much the name of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just build something and get it to work. You get it to work, it's high five. Nobody cared about security. And we work with a lot of companies that had software developed, 5-10 years ago. They're still using it today. Maybe hasn't been updated, maybe right. Not. And the person who wrote it wasn't thinking about security, especially 10 years ago. So it's really important to understand that, you may think that your software that you use, that you had developed, a long time ago that helps you do something in your business, you may think that that's not something that could ever be used to, take control of your system or deploy ransomware. But that's not true at all.
Right.
These things help hackers move laterally in your network. If not, be, as we see in Kaseya case, be the thing that actually gets the ransomware onto the system. So That's a pretty big one that doesn't get talked about enough. But I don't also not a lot of companies have custom applications like in their environment, but the ones that do need to be keenly aware of that one right there.
Yeah, and also your security professionals need to make sure that the software that they're using is following those standards. I won't give any names out. I'll tell you in the green room later, but I was in a Slack chat with a couple developers of a widely used network security software, and several people were talking about some bugs and issues they were having. Mm-hmm. And the developer was on that chat making changes and rolling them out. Like, that's disturbing because those are going out. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure exactly how they're doing it, but it just seems like it was very willy-nilly. You know, like they didn't have a procedure in place. Like there should be somebody going over every single byte that's been changed in the software for the day to make sure that it was, or by the hour or whatever, to make sure that it was intentional, that nothing extra was added in. I mean, that's scary. And that's what gets us in a lot of trouble with.
Yeah. So I think you're right, Randy. I think I'd like to do a whole show on this next week because there's a lot here. And we could talk about this all day, and we're already over an hour into the show. So let's wrap it up. But we'll go into this a little bit deeper next week with what all these different things. But they also identified, and I'll just read them off: user training, user security and awareness training, user account management, privileged account management, password policies, network segmentation, huge one that I don't see a lot of companies doing. Network intrusion prevention, disable or remove feature or program, antivirus, anti-malware, and then update software. So we're going to cut into those on the next call. We'll go into detail about what all of those mean and, give examples of, if, something had happened that we know happened, or, if this wasn't there or if somebody did this wouldn't have happened. We'll cite examples so business owners can kind of start to connect the dots with what all this means from a technical standpoint to what it means to, the computer, the software, and everything that they use to run their business. So I think that's a great idea to jump into next week. And we'll have Andre back with us next week, right? I think, right? Is that accurate?
As far as I know.
Good. Because Andre didn't join us this week. He's a celebrity, so he travels a lot, and he was not able to join us today. So Randy and I we carried the show this week. So I think that's it for me. That's all I have to say. I did want to mention one thing though. You and I talked about it in the green room. To any of my security people that are listening to this, please keep in mind that this attack on Kaseya was not what I would consider a normal attack by a ransomware group. There were a lot of things that they did not do that we typically see in normal ransomware attacks. I'm talking over thousands and thousands of attacks. We see the same pattern over and over. And there are specific things in this attack that are missing. And I just want to make sure that people are looking for the red herring in this event and making sure that there isn't something else that's been compromised and the ransomware is just, a look over here type of thing. And that gets all the attention while there's other vulnerabilities being exploited. I know they brought in Mandiant and FireEye. I'm sure they're doing a good job with this, but we need to be mindful of this stuff, and we need to be aware that this is a very unusual way for them to deploy this type of attack. And I am concerned that this is a red herring for something else with that software. So
yeah, that's a great point. And that's I really hope if there are any security professionals that are watching that they do consider that.
Yep. So, and then anybody who has to deal with anything like this, consider that it might not appear what it is on the surface. So that's all for me. Any last words you want to share with the audience before?
That's all I've got. Just stay safe out there.
I appreciate you hopping on with me today and and riding on this podcast and educating everybody. Remember, folks, you're listening to us through on your walk in the car while you're working out. Remember to rate our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It helps other people find the show, and maybe take 15 seconds of your life and write a little review in the review area there, and let other people know why they should be listening to us. And just help us out and share out the podcast. We are growing every single week. We get more and more downloads. It's awesome. We really appreciate the feedback and the love that you guys are showing. So we'll be back next week to break down what it is that companies should be doing to protect themselves based on the little infographic I showed towards the end of the show here. So I hope everyone has a great week. What's up?
I said, unless something else pops up between now and then.
Yeah, which is probably a very good chance. So hope everyone has a great week. Well, we'll see you next week. See you on the other side.